Miri with kids. So excited to be back. Not necessarily so excited for lockdown, but considering that we have such fun online clubs when we're during lockdown, silver lining, it's worth it. Okay, everyone. So we're back to science in the kitchen, learning about Hashem's incredible world from things that we find in our kitchens. And we're going to be doing some science experiments today with something that I'm definitely confident you're going to find in your kitchen, I hope. Dish soap could be of any sort. Water, there should be lots of that in your kitchen. And you're going to need a straw for our first experiment. Now, if you want, we've got something super cool called glycerine, which is a really fun addition to make our bubbles even more bubbly. And you can also use corn syrup. It has a similar chemical property, so it'll do something very similar. It basically makes our bubbles evaporate slower because everything that Hashem made can fall into 3 different categories. We're going to call them solid, liquid, or gas, all states of matter, okay, items that we have. So for example, this cup is very solid. The water that we're going to use for our experiment is liquid. Well, not this empty bottle, but this one. And the air that I'm breathing now, you can't really see, it's gas. And those liquids, solid, liquid, and gas get to blend all the time when you're blowing bubbles because you can clearly see when a bubble pops, it evaporates, turns back into a gas. So what this does is it makes it evaporate slower. So then we end up having bubbles lasting longer. It's fun. Okay, so today's bubble experiment day. And we're gonna get started with any kind of bowl or cup. So I'm gonna start with a cup. It's a clear cup. Take some of your water. We're gonna empty it into the cup. You can make a bracha and drink if you want to start, because after you add the other stuff, you can't quite drink anymore. Okay, I've got my cup of water. Now I'm gonna add some of my glycerine. If you've got some of that, again, you can add it. If you don't, totally still works, but I'll add a good amount at the bottom. I didn't really measure it. You can add a couple of tablespoons if you want to measure. Now I'm gonna take my dish soap. I've got Palmolive dish soap. I'm gonna do a good squirt. A long squirt inside. There we go. A good long squirt. There's a lot of green swirling around. Then I'm going to take one of my straws and I'm going to use it to swirl the mixture and make it blend really nicely. And what you're doing with that is you're creating a really fun bubble mixture. Now, if you've got bubbles, ready-made bubbles in your house, that also works. But it's really cool to make your own bubbles. Hello. So much more fun. So you can make your own bubbles and do a lot of really cool things with them. Today, I'm going to show you a couple of them, of fun things you can do with bubbles. So the funnest is probably without the glycerine to wash your dishes for your mothers, because that's fun for you and it's fun for her. Sometimes, not always so much fun, but sometimes. So you can always offer to wash the dishes with homemade bubbles that you make with your dish soap and water. But today, we're not yet up to dinner time if we're only starting now and it's not yet 4 o'clock. So you'll save your excitement to wash your dishes for later and you'll start with blowing some bubbles. So the first thing you want to do after you make your bubble solution is make sure that wherever you're going to be blowing your bubbles is wet, because bubbles love when things are wet. If it's dry, it pops. I'll show you an example. So let's say, for example, I wanted to blow some bubbles on my hand. Imagine blowing bubbles on my palm. So I've got my hand here. If I make my hand wet and I pour a little bit of water on my hand, I might even take some of the bubble solution, put that on my hand. There we go. So I've got some bubble solution on my hand. I can take my bubble wand, which is just gonna be my straw, dip it into the bubble solution and try this. I just made a bubble on my hand. So bubbles don't even need really cool wands. All you need is a straw and a bubble and a wet surface. I'm gonna wet my other hand now with some of the same liquid. Let's see what I can do with these two together. How cool is that? They're having a little bit of a bubble meeting here. We can stretch it. I hope you guys can see it in the camera. Stretch my bubble as thin as it can go up. And we shared. Isn't that nice? Bubbly and wonderful. Switching from one hand to the next, we can try to make them meet again and pop. That's the end of this bubble one. Okay, so now you see we need to have a wet surface. As soon as you have a wet surface, it works. I just dried my hands in the towel that's on my lap. And I'm going to show you, if I try to blow a bubble back into my hand now, it's going to pop really quickly. But if my hand was wet, especially with that bubble solution, like I showed you before, it's going to work like a charm. Dip it back in and blow. And look at that, massive bubble on my palm. But another really important thing to know is that when you're blowing, because the bubble is pretty thin, right? The outside of it is pretty thin, and then it thins out and then pops. If you blow too hard, the bubble's gonna pop even before you get there. So you have to kind of blow gently. I wonder if I can get another bubble in there. Oh my goodness, guys. Can you check that out? Think I can manage a third? I've actually never even tried this before. Let's see if I can get a third bubble in my palm. Okay, this is so cool. 3 bubbles. I've got 3 bubbles hanging out on my hand right here at Chabad Youth After School Clubs. Should we try for a 4th? Let's. I'm having too much fun. Okay, well, we kind of transformed that structure into a bubble igloo right now, and the bubble igloo is also doing really well. If I want to touch my bubble, I can, because if my hand's wet, I can touch it, pat it, pull it, do all kind of cool things with it. But remember, because bubbles don't like dryness, if I dried my hands and touch them, pop, that's what's going to happen next. How cool was that? That was really fun. We have to do that again. Okay, now we're going to try doing the same thing that I just did here and make bubbles, but instead of doing the bubbles on my palm, this time we're going to do some bubbles on the table. Now, this table, I put a plate down and then I poured some water. The reason I poured some water is for the same reason you already know, because bubbles are way more fun with water and wet surfaces. So I poured some water on the plate, but if you're using a nice like stone top or a tabletop that's something that can handle moisture, you can just go straight onto the counter with a little bit of water, and if you have a spritz bottle, you can spritz some water around and do the science experiment straight on the table. Once again, you have your bubble mixture, you have your wet surface, and now you've got your bubble wand, your homemade one if you're using the straw. You can use any other bubble wand if you've got other ones as well. Okay, dip it in gently and lean towards your surface, towards your plate, and let's get some bubbles going. There we go, a nice domed bubble. Let's see if we can get some other bubbles inside there. I'm onto my bubble igloo. You know what? We're gonna make it from a bubble igloo to a bubble flower. Let's add some flowers around. I think my shadel wants to partake in this activity as well. Adding some flower petals all around. There we go. And just about ready to add, I'm gonna make my hand a little bit wet and kind of move if I can. My very wet hand blew lots of bubbles away, but add again the center of my flower. One more petal. And our final petal. How's that for a beautiful flower with a stem right here for Chabad Youth Kids? Now I'm gonna take, see, even the bubble is not popped by the bubble wand. I can kind of lead my flower around because it's wet. If my bubble wand was dry, I wouldn't be able to blow right through. I can even cut my bubbles literally. You can like, if a bubble wand is wet, you can even like put it right through a bubble just like that, and it won't pop it, as you can see. Okay. We're ready to go right back to attempting. These bubbles are pretty determined to stay in there. Pop, 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 and pop. Okay, wet surface, bubbles, ready to roll. Let's go. One dome and right inside. Now we've got 2. Let's see if we can get to 3 like I did with my hand. Up. It's already journeying out. You are an escapee bubble. We've got 1 in there. Another 1 in there. Another one in there, and they're all escaping. Escaping faster than I can. We're building a bubble from inside. We're like building a flower from inside. Do you see the way that all the petals are forming from inside? And it quickly joins the outside rings. This kind of looks like a face with curly hair surrounding it. I'm gonna pop all those bubbles and we're gonna go back to our original dome again. How fun is this? One big one. Two. I could never move fast enough for these sliding bubbles. You know what, guys? I'm gonna do it straight on the table because then they won't slide as much. Problem is this surface is not so smooth, so it's not like the best surface as other surfaces in the kitchen might be, like a countertop, but I'm kind of comfortable sitting here. I'm gonna stay right here, just wet my surface all around and try to see this time if I can make a bubble that stands in place and doesn't keep running away. There we go, one bubble. And another bubble inside. Was inside. Oh, and they keep popping out. And there's a fold in the tablecloth, so that kind of makes it pop out as well. Now, one other really fun thing is to try to blow the biggest bubble you can blow. I'm gonna demonstrate a really big flower. I'm gonna do a really big flower. Let's get this table surface dry for a minute because I wasn't having as much luck with that on the table, and I think it's probably harder for you guys to see. But one more minute with this plate here. Back in my bubble solution, I'm gonna try to see how big my bubble can go. Let's go for it. Till I popped it. I think they got to a good 7 inches or so. And I have no idea what that is in centimeters. I made it. My goal, and I couldn't interrupt to tell you guys while I was blowing, but I wanted to fill up the entire rim of the plate. And that was a pretty cool, awesome, massive bubble. Because big bubbles are really fun. So I want to help you guys make some really big bubbles and make some really big bubbles that don't just sit on plates, but they can go places like snaking all around the room. But just for fun, we're going to do one more of those bubbles on a palm, and this time you guys join me. So again, we're gonna wet our palms with a bubble solution, and then I'm gonna dip it inside, blow a bubble on my palm. You wanna dare to try to do another one inside? I'm just making it bigger. Here we go, a double layer. I'm gonna try. Let's start that one again. One, two, still aiming for the third, and 3. Now you guys ready? Just to have fun here for a minute, I'm gonna pop. And the insides are still standing. Pop, and here's our cutesy little baby bubble standing at the bottom. And now he's gone. Okie dokes, guys, you ready for the next one? Here's what you need to do now. So we've got our bubble solution. We're still gonna need it, but this time it'll be more fun if you've got some kind of bowl or something to transfer the bubble solution into. And that's how you're gonna have a little bit easier access to the bubble solution. If you've only got the cup, that's all right, that'll work. But if you've got a bowl, you can do what I did. Okay, now you need a water bottle. If you've got one of these, which comes in smaller as well, but this is 600 ml. I'd say this is great, but even more fun if you've got a soda water bottle or one of these, which is 1.5 liters. Even more fun, but they'll both work well. But I'll just demonstrate what you're gonna do. Take your bottle. After you take your bottle, you're gonna wanna take off the label so you can see what's going on in there. And then where the spout is the side that you still need. So we're gonna be cutting off the end, not the side of the spout, the end. For this job, you're gonna need a good pair of scissors or a razor. If you've got an adult around, they're pretty handy adults, aren't they? You can ask one of them to help you. Just squish the bottle down, try to make a cut right there. Once you make one cut, it's usually easier just to insert your scissors and cut around the rest of it. Okay? Your bottle should look something like this. Nice bottom and nice spout and no bottom. Okay? When your bottle's ready and it looks like this, the next thing you're gonna need is a soft cloth or an old sock. If you've got an old sock, and make sure it's a clean one because it's gonna be coming, making some decorations around your house. Even though we are using soap, I guess that'll clean it. I took an old undershirt that we found, really, really old undershirt, cut it all up, and then you're gonna stretch that piece of material or the old sock, not the part that's open, the part that's closed of the sock, over the bottom of your bottle. The next thing you'll need is a rubber band or something. I didn't even have rubber bands, and it's lockdown, so I was not gonna leave my house to buy a rubber band. That's not an essential, even though Chabad Youth Clubs are essential. But hair bubbles work really well. That's what I discovered. So take your hair bubble and let's stretch it over the bottle, just like that. Okay? Now, if you're gonna be using a bigger bottle, if you've got one, it's even better. Took another piece of our trusty old undershirt, stretched it out over the cut bottom, as I did. I didn't even cut off the the Australian Natural spring water label. And I am going to secure it to the bottom with my wonderful hair bubble. And the goal of the hair bubble is to hold the cloth in place. So you want to make sure the cloth is securely pulled down, no gaps, it's got it all. And I've got this little flat drum looking piece, okay? Now here's a story that's kind of funny, but not so funny. I love doing science experiments. So one time we were in my house doing this science experiment and I was having tons of fun with bubbles. And I said, come kids, let's do the science experiment together. Because sometimes I even do science experiments by myself. Not so often, but mostly with my kids. So one of my kids came in and thought, that's really cool. And I gave them each turns to do what we're about to do. And then during this next part, we're gonna be blowing bubbles. But sometimes when you are blowing really hard, you take a deep breath in, like, and that's called inhaling. So this dear daughter of mine did a big dip and she got a mouthful of bubbles. And she was blowing bubbles for a long time after. And we all thought it was really funny. She didn't find it so funny, but a little bit funny. So your goal now is to try to keep the bubbles out of your mouth, but you will be using your mouth as the blower, as we do with bubbles. So we take our new bubble wand, our brand new one, and it's a little on the large side. So just to keep this a little bit contained, I'm gonna take a foil pan to try to keep catching all my bubbles, because these bubbles are not gonna be small enough to catch in my palm like the other ones were. Now, I'm gonna move it out of the way for a sec so you can see what I'm gonna do. I take my bubble wand and I'm holding the bottom and I'm gonna dip it gently into my bubble solution. Okay, the mixture that I've got here. can let the excess strip off. And I know that it's pretty wet. I can see the whole bubble solution is wet. The whole bottom of the bubble wand is wet. Now for the fun part. What you're gonna do next is take your big bubble wand. You're gonna put your mouth over the top of the bottle and you are going to blow and make some bubbles. Let's see what comes out. How cool. Do you see what's going on here? We've got snakes and snakes and snakes of bubbles. Long, mobile, amazing bubbles that can wave and dance and do lots of really fun things. Another really cool thing that you can do with these bubbles, I'm going to show you in a minute, but they're definitely really, really fun. You can fill lots of areas with them very quickly. You need to, you re-dip inside your bubble solution. And do some blowing. Think we can spell a C for Chabad? See if we can form a C. How'd I do? Pretty good? Not bad. You can make a Y. It's the top of it. I'll still be holding my C, and then I'll try the Y. I'm going to put the C down on the table. If the table's wet, it's going to last for a very long time. If it isn't, it's going to start popping right away. And then you can make the stick of the Y. My table's dry, so it's not going to last all that long. And then you can make all the rest of the letters that you want to make. But, guys, so now with all this bubble snake, which is really, really fun, another really cool thing you guys can do with your bubbles and bubble snake wand here is actually create bubble snake art. So if you're one of those people who really likes writing letters on pretty paper or just cool paper or just make cool art for around your room, check out what we want to do next. Okay, take your bowl that has the bubble solution in it. If you want, you can make it smaller, divide it into separate bowls. So let's say I've got one more bowl here. I'm going to pour some of my bubble solution to another bowl. And now I've got two separate bowls of bubble solution. The reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to take some food coloring and add a good squirt of food coloring. It's always smart to do this with gloves, actually. Menachem, do you mind passing me some gloves, please? Lockdown fun. Okay, I'm going to do a good squirt of red food coloring into one of them. Thank you. And I'm going to put on my gloves. It's already a bit too late, but being colorful is fun. And blue food coloring into the second one. A good squirt. And now I'm going to take my bubble wand, dip it back into the bubbles, the red bubbles this time. And as I do that, and you guys can try this later if you'd like, and if your parents let. As I do that, I'm going to grab a white piece of paper. Check out what I'm going to do next. I'm going to blow some bubbles. And it's kind of going to touch/kiss the piece of paper as I go. Okay? Letting it come down. And then let those bubbles come back down. Now, I don't like them sitting on the page for too long because then the page takes a really long time to dry. But check out what it looks like so far. Hope you guys can see how cool that pattern is. I'm still not finished. Okay, now I'm going to try the next color. So take my same bubble wand, dip it into the blue, and do some blowing. Do some more blowing. Touches my paper and let it just enough to kind of kiss the paper, and then I pull it back away. And I can wipe it off, and if I want to add some more of the red, I can do the same thing. Dip it back in, let it drip off, and add some more. I want to show you guys what it comes out like. The bubbles all come off and they pop. Then you can let it dry and you'll see the shape on both sides really. The shape of the bubbles with our color in it leaves a sort of imprint. You can leave that to dry and you end up with amazing, amazing, really cool kind of tie-dyed paper. You don't have to do it with more than one color. You could just leave it with one color, but all those really cool bubble patterns are all along the top of the page. Do you guys see? How cool. It's amazing. Okay, now just to end off, because we've had so much fun today, and I hope you guys have had as much fun learning about Hashem's amazing world, all the things that are in it, the different things that are all around us that we never even know to experiment with. And I'm just gonna blow some nice long bubbles to say goodbye to you guys, okay? Hope you can see this on the other end of your screens. Keep going. This is only about as tall as I can go. But if you guys in your, I'm starting to get a little lightheaded from all that blowing, but if you guys in your house can keep going, maybe you'll get into the Guinness Book of World Records for bubble blowing, and maybe you can even do cool things like jump rope with it, or other kind of awesome experiments, write secret messages all laid out. Have a wonderful day, and we're hoping to see you guys not just at tonight's clubs, but again tomorrow at our amazing clubs on Wednesday with Musi. We're going to be learning all about part 2 of how to make caricatures. Super fun for those of you who joined us. It's going to be on Zoom. And after that, Wednesday evening, join us once again for Goodnight Chabad Youth, which is a storytime classic in lockdown. And after that, on Thursday, Chabad Youth is still not finished. After school on Thursday, we've got amazing Chabad Youth mini chefs with Dvorah Leah, and we're going to actually be preparing for Rosh Hashanah. I'll leave it to your imagination to guess what we're going to be making. But meanwhile, I'm going to continue playing with my bubbles because this is just so much fun. And I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. So wishing you a wonderful night. Good night, Chabad Youth, or good afternoon, Chabad Youth.